tonight I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. George Ackerman, who's a Parkinson's disease advocate and sort of driving force behind Together for Sharon, which we'll hear a lot more about coming up. George, welcome in. I hope you're well.
Thank you and to your whole audience for giving us an opportunity today to speak our message. And in the United States, the biggest thing in the world is the Super Bowl. But for me, Parkinson's awareness is more important. So no offense to the fans out there, but we need to send this message. I wish they would put up a giant scoreboard and just for a minute, put our show and your show, but they didn't.
Wouldn't that be nice? I did realize when you booked this date, I thought, oh, shit, I don't watch American football myself, but I know it's a big thing for a lot of people. So thank you so much for your commitment. And I think that opener is just, it sums up what you do and your commitment to the cause. So obviously we've been in touch online. I've been sort of watching your work from a distance, but maybe for anyone here tonight that doesn't know who you are, do you want to maybe give us that one before we get into the Parkinson's story and everything? Maybe just give us a quick overview of who's George Ackerman, a little bit about what you do for your career and this sort of thing, and then we'll dive into why you advocate.
Yeah, I mean, your name of your show is important, just not for my story, but my own self, chronic pain. Unfortunately, not to get off topic, but I had 2 spine surgeries last year that didn't work, and I might have to have a third. So maybe we could talk about back pain in the future. But for now, my career has always been dedicated to victims of crime. So I started as an attorney and then a police officer and did my PhD in criminal justice. And I actually work with African-American mothers who lost their loved ones due to crime in West Palm Beach, which is in Florida and the United States. And so I've always been an advocate for victims. So my heart goes out to those who are really forgotten by the criminal justice system in America. And I kind of correlate to the work I do today with Parkinson's, because until recently, the political world, the United States, has had nothing for those who have been diagnosed for Parkinson's disease and the caretakers. And for the first time, I'm proud to say, December 2023, the legislature, Congress, they passed the first bill in history to, it's called the National Plan to End Parkinson's Disease. So now it goes to the Senate. So I'm hoping in 2024, maybe a year after, they'll pass that and it'll go to the president for the signature. But it's not just about the U.S. I'm hoping other countries after will take that plan and implement them in their countries. And hopefully, if we have time, we'll get to that. But I really, again, I'm grateful for your time, your audience. And, I feel like we're all family. It's not just a podcast or a talk. You're doing something that's bigger than all of us that will make a lasting impression forever. So thank you again.
Yeah, you're speaking my language there, because as somebody that often says he doesn't feel like he's got the energy to turn up on a Sunday night, but I do it because you feel like it's a bigger cause. Clearly we speak the same language. But I just want to say, yes, first of all, sorry about that chronic pain experience. Let's just get you back on to talk about that. And I'd also love to have you come on in the future as that bill progresses. It'd be great to hear, how your hard work sort of transpired. But what an admirable career, George. And you are not the first person that's come on here who's an advocate that comes from that background of law or working in the courts and things like that. But what an admirable career. So on behalf of everybody, your help, and thank you so much for those choices.
Thank you.
So in terms of, and I suppose, guys, if anyone's watching this live, anyone listening back on the podcast, I'll put links to support and everything, because I'm expecting this one to be a little bit of an emotional one. So if anyone listening or watching this needs a bit of support, let us know, and let us know if we can signpost you. But do you want to maybe tell us about how your sort of experience with Parkinson's disease started?
Yes, I appreciate it. And again, unfortunately, I'm here for a sad story or negative, but I always try to flip it to being somewhat positive. And when we end, I want it to be on a positive note. But on 1/1/2020, my mother sadly passed due to Parkinson's disease, and she had late onset dementia. Back then, she probably had it for 15 years. They didn't have as much research and data today or awareness. Our journey was lost that day, and my mother was my best friend. So what I didn't realize is there's not a lot of male caretakers, which is sad. I don't know if the guys just don't want to step up or talk about it, but I always joke that I'm a mama's boy, and I spoke to my mother several times a day, and I feel that I wouldn't be the man I am today or even accomplish what I have if it wasn't for my mother's sacrifice. So I decided to start a website. It's togetherforsharon.com. We do not accept money. we don't accept anything really, except that I want people out there fighting this disease to know that we send our love and support, and that people like me out there fighting. And literally, the only thing I want in return is a cure for this disease. And since then, I started, in a way, our own journey. The website really shows some resources from around the world to help people realize they're not alone. When I was going through it as my mother's primary caretaker, I actually felt alone. I felt sad, depressed, burnt out. When you have Parkinson's disease, it's very different because it affects every person so differently that's why it's very difficult to treat. So what somebody listens today about our journey doesn't mean it'll affect them the same way. Some individuals, never get dementia with Parkinson's, but if you do have Parkinson's, unfortunately, it's life changing and there's no cure. Last week, I had an honor to meet Michael J. Fox. I'm sure many of your listeners know,
Wow.
famous actor, and he has Parkinson's disease. And you can see it's really, affecting him, unfortunately. He had something called young onset, which means he had it very early in age, 30. But it's amazing that people think that it's an elderly disease. It's not. The other thing is, I always have so much to share. We won't get to it all, but if you go to the website, I decided a year ago it's not just about my mother and I anymore. It's about everybody. So what did I do? I found there was an organization called Parkinson's World Congress. I never even heard of them, and that's part of the problem. And what I learned is there's about 1 million people in the USA with Parkinson's, but there's 10 million people around the world. So I decided to really set a goal. In only 4 or 5 months, somehow, I interviewed over 500 individuals throughout the world. One group who I
Wow.
worked closely with was Parkinson's UK. So UK is another area that, there are people out there struggling, probably listening today, that feel alone. And, we just need to get their journeys and stories out. So for completely free, I spent many hours, many nights like you do with your program, and just dedicated a few months and kind of cut back a little bit. If you go to the website and click interviews, you'll see they're mostly written, but over 500 interviews from people from Iceland to UK to England, France, Spain, Australia, Africa, any country, name it. And what I did is I literally posted their journey. So every day I wake up, when I feel tired or the Super Bowl's on or burnt out or I don't want to speak to Joel today, I remember those stories and those people, and it makes me continue to fight on. So I just again want everyone to know that they're not going to be forgotten and that I'll be fighting till my last day or until we find a cure for this disease.
So admirable. And can I just say, George, that really comes across as well, like following you on LinkedIn and
Um,
that commitment, it really comes across. And you speak so beautifully about your mother and obviously that relationship was really strong. Like that must have been really hard to get past the grief to then do something as such a force that you're doing with the Together for Sharon movement. Would you mind, like, maybe, and I appreciate this might be difficult and hopefully you've shared it a few times before, so that makes it a little easier. But can you maybe talk to us a little bit about when you went from that grieving process to the action for change process and what that looked like?
Sure. When an individual has Parkinson's, it affects again differently. My mother, she had it for 15 years. I didn't really become involved till the fourth year till she passed. She only had stiffness in her left arm, so she had trouble eating and things. But she still lived an independent life. She lived alone. She was able to, have friends and go out and walk and very loved life. Her grandkids were her favorite. She had 3 grandkids. But then the fourth year, she was in a lot of pain too. She had fibromyalgia, which you might be aware of because that's a
Yeah.
chronic pain. She also had dystonia, which is the curling of the toes. She had internal tremors. So Michael J. Fox, you'll see, he shakes. So she didn't have that. She had the internal. But I always look back even today and think, did she really know what Parkinson's was? Did the community of researchers know? Was she ashamed? Because sadly, a lot of people don't want to talk about Parkinson's because they don't want to. Even Michael J. Fox released a movie last year, if you saw on Apple, and I think it was called Touch. But anyway, and it was very important because he said his struggle was, does he tell the movie industry because he doesn't want to lose his career, and he's been a hero because he speaks out like I want everyone to do because we are a family in this. So my mother went for a special program to try and help, and I think they drastically changed her medicines. And that night, I was called over at 4 a.m. to our house, and she was moving her furniture out of her home and thought somebody was going to harm her. And that's because of the delusions and hallucinations due to dementia. And that was the day I really had to take over literally her life. And it was very sad. And, I was shocked. But as, again, her son and just someone I knew took care of me when I was small, I was never going to let her be alone. That's the day it started to really learn about Parkinson's. I don't know if it was too late. We couldn't, everything we tried just felt like we failed. But when she passed again, I decided to make a little memory band. I don't have it here, but it just says a memory of Sharon for Parkinson's awareness. And the site, I thought we'd have like 30 people and I'd move on. And if my mother was here today, she'd say, George, don't waste your time, deal with your kids, But all of a sudden, a week ago, I noticed for some reason there's a little dot on my website, and I scrolled down and it says over 30,000 people have visited the website. And
Wow.
I don't know how I'm on TikTok, and it just kind of evolved by itself. We have a book coming out, and that's going to be really exciting. It'll share my mother's journey and mine. But again, we're not in this. It's hard to go on shows and even have our own podcast because sadly, you would know more. Everyone seems to want something, in return, but I don't.
Yeah.
So it's like I have to spend time explaining that literally do not give me money. Just know that you're not alone. And I feel the UK, Africa, England, France, we're all family. And this is even in the bill that's going through US, as many of you probably watch, we have a chaotic political system and everybody fights. But this bill, it was completely agreed, bipartisan, and there's no argument because there's no political bounds to stop this disease. It's just affecting everyone. It has no name, has no reason, but we don't even know why people get Parkinson's. And I'm trying to be optimistic, but I could still get it, and so, we just continue to advocate.
Just it's amazing. Like there's people are saying in chat watching this live now. It's just amazing, and that compassion and that selfishness like really just comes across. And I know like you reached out to me to come on the show, and that I have two types of the way we get guests on this show happens two ways. Either I have to beg people to get them to understand how important these conversations are, and then hopefully they get round to joining us, or people want to join, but that's because there's an agenda that they've got a book deal and they want to share that, or whatever. So when you reached out and I looked at your work, it proper shocked me to the point I sent a link to your social straight to my wife and said, "You got to check this out because it's just different. It's so different to what we get." So please know that really comes across that I use the phrase made of the right stuff on here a lot about advocates, because we are in a world where it's not always clear what people's intentions are. And I think with the work you do, it's just so transparent and so obvious, and how much you know, share of your story and such a personal thing. Um, that must, I know there's a point where it helps you, like from a therapy point of view, in terms of sharing, but also that comes with its own challenges, I imagine, doesn't it? Being so open.
I mean, your questions are completely perfect, and not just saying it to make you feel good, but I mean, they're very important also. Uh, Speaking to you today still is helping me. So, these are not tough. These are not easy conversations. I've said it 100 times, and I've done like a lot of these, and we have our own podcast. But, I feel that I wouldn't be able to continue in this world maybe if I didn't have the opportunity like this today to speak to you and your listeners and viewers, because I don't become like just, hey, I'm going to show up, let's talk about it. But, we add this to my website, we share it with the world, but we have to have a continuing conversation, or this is never going to get done. So I think even though it's been 4 years, I still grieve every day because, any good things that happen, I could call my mother first. When I met my wife, she was also became best friends with my mother. So my wife's been a great support. And we co-host the Together for Sharon podcast, where we talk to people who have Parkinson's and just share their story. Just yesterday, I had an amazing one with an individual who's in the UK. His name is Matt Ferguson, and he's actually a comic book artist for Parkinson's. He has Parkinson's, and if you have time, if you check out our website under Together for Sharon podcast, it's not up yet; it'll be out next week. But we put up his comic strip, and it's incredible because it's like he has a little dot, which is Parkinson's, and it's him. So it's a cartoon, but they're film strips like the old days, which we went away
Okay.
from, which I don't think we should. But he's just a hero to me because there's people like that in the UK, around the world, no one knows about. And this gentleman is changing the world from in his own way. So again, I always reiterate it's not anymore about me and my mother, but I guess sharing his journey, talking to you is helping me still continue to fight. And some people are like, why do you fight? Well, I just feel in my heart I don't want anyone to have to go through, what my mother did and what I did as a caretaker. But again, not to get too sad, my mother again loved exercise. She walked many miles, but in the last 4 years, she went from walking to the cane, from the cane to a walker, from a walker to a wheelchair, from a wheelchair to bedbound. And we can't understand even why it accelerated because there are many individuals with Parkinson, and they say you don't die from Parkinson's, you die with it. So even to this day, my mother was very healthy, and I'm still kind of baffled as to what really happened. But like I said, it treats every person sadly differently. But don't let Parkinson's ever define you. It might be part of you, but that's not what I wanted my mother to be remembered for. And that's what talking to you still helps me. And unfortunately, I still think I'm grieving. And some days I'll have these and I'm fine. I'll walk out to the other room and I'm 6'2", like 200 pounds in police, and I'll just fall apart because, it's tough. And on the last note, I had the amazing opportunity to work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and I was able to speak to my local congresswoman on behalf of the bill to get it passed. And I had a 3-minute quick speech, which I practiced, and I like talking, so I've spoken to big audiences. And I put the speech on the website under the National Plan to End Parkinson's Disease. But it was just a 3-minute quick speech. And then when I got there to do it, it was on virtual. I fell apart after 2 minutes because there was one sentence that says my mother's favorite time was Sunday mornings blowing bubbles in the backyard with her 3 grandkids. But because of Parkinson's disease, she'll never be able to do that again. So those are again, some of the tougher times. But like I said, from the tough times, it brought so many incredible opportunities, like speaking with you and so many positive people I would never have met. So I'm really, again, so grateful for our time today and our friendship, hopefully going forward.
He's such a lovely man with such kind words. And then I feel like I have the whole I talk about imposter syndrome a lot on this advocacy journey. So thank you. You talked about so many things you say resonated. The whole, carrying on and using advocacy as a way of carrying on. I'm very much similar for that. I've been really open about the mental health side and that grieving thing. I've lived with my conditions most of my life and I still have my setbacks
Great.
and my wobbles. And then advocacy is that thing that I turn to. So know that you're not alone with that. And I think also if you ever need somebody to remind you that you're doing a good job, then yeah, drop me a message and I will I will be the first to remind you that what you're doing is having an impact in this scene.
I appreciate it. Like you, we don't do it for anything. We do it for everyone else. But every day I still, it's funny because I might have like all these degrees and things, but to me, like it doesn't mean anything because everyone I meet, I learn something new. And today, again, I'll take a lot to my heart and to my family from our time today.
And I always think as well as on this advocacy journey, it's amazing what you can achieve as well, isn't it? Because I'm
Yeah.
sure you're probably like me. If you'd have said years ago that you'd work out how to do a podcast or you'd find yourself meeting Michael J. Fox, that sort of thing. It's just like you I don't know, you find this strength you didn't know you have, don't you?
Yeah, and I also, again, all of you and every story that the only story that breaks my heart is the one that I'm not aware of. And that's what we're all trying to do is bring awareness for the disease, but also inspire people. This plan, the National Plan to End Parkinson's, it only affects the US. But I still think that UK, England, France, Greece, everyone can take this plan and implement it. There's no reason they shouldn't in your own country. Get those individuals support. A sad, quick story is in Africa. I interviewed a gentleman who I've become friendly with. I would never have been able to reach him if it wasn't for virtual and the internet. So that's only the positive. We have negatives with social media, but what a great positive. But he told me that in his journey, it's posted on the website, that they think that Parkinson's disease is a witchcraft. And that's horrible because they took his mother from him, and this is in Africa, and they wouldn't let anyone see his mother. He had to break out of his community and sneak away and see her, and she didn't even want him to see him. So the problem is, again, if we don't have enough awareness and understand the disease, it's really destroying individuals' lives, not just the health, but the mental, the physical, everything. So I think bringing his story out into the public is very important. And again, I really appreciate the Parkinson's UK. They're a huge organization, but I don't think they're known as much too. And my goal and dream is not just again to talk about the U.S. It's really to reach everyone in the world, because this is a global fight. And Parkinson's treats, maybe you get different symptoms, but it does treat everyone, in a way the same. And another point, you mentioned something earlier, and when I worked in the law enforcement field and law, I helped family members of homicide victims. That's family members who lost their loved one due to crime. A lot of times the criminal justice system here forgets the family. And I find again that the Parkinson's family community is also forgotten. So we have to, do our best to stand up for them and make sure their voices are also heard.
Yeah, I love how representative you are. I also love how much you talk about caregivers, because that's something we're very passionate about. On most of the people you'll see in the live chat tonight are not always people that are living with it. They're the people supporting those, and
Mhm.
I talk a lot about how if my caregivers fall down, then I fall down, sort of thing. And that really comes across, and I think as well, like there are levels to advocacy. And I know when I started off, I just wanted to share my story. Then it was like I want to help other people
Yeah.
share theirs, and then you become aware of those global issues. And you mentioned like that issue with Africa. We have a very similar thing in the psoriasis community, where certain parts of the world it's considered to be that you're cursed or you did something terrible in a previous life. And I think that's when you've really caught the advocacy bug, when you start educating and being aware of these global issues, and then not being afraid to take them on as well. So I suppose you really are not just focusing on the United States here, are you? You're doing it globally.
Yeah, my goal again last year, I had like an awakening in a way and realized that again, it's not just about my mother and me, it's about everybody. Because unfortunately, our story has ended. Mine continues on as an advocate, but I'm no longer a caretaker, unfortunately. But there's so many again out there, and I find if I could coin a term, maybe I should trademark it and sell. But I think about in law enforcement, in criminal justice system, those family members are called secondary victims because they're not the ones who are harmed physically, but they're treated like victims in the system. No one, lets them know what's happening with their family member. No one knows what's happening with the criminal who might have taken. It's horrible. I feel like, in a way, I was a secondary Parkinson's victim because my mother had Parkinson's and all the signs, but I was sitting there throughout it all in horrible anguish, pain, trying to figure out how to explain to her. We didn't know, she was going to pass. She was only 69. That's very, very young, 2024. In my view, I might be wrong, but I would think we would live till, 90 these days or 85. And that's a lot of time she was robbed. And if you consider it, she might have passed at 69, but she was suffering with this horrible disease for 15 years. So she really, in a way, passed at, 45, 50. So it's just very unfair. And again, I I write. I have a book. It's done. It's just going to take a while to get out there because you want it right. But I don't tell a lot of people that the last year of her life I actually videotaped and took pictures of her. But I won't. I did it for medical science if they ever called, but I won't share it because I don't want her to be remembered like that. But
Mhm.
I did keep a journal. So on that journal, with just a few notes a night for 1 year, and it really shows you it's going to be tough, but shows my struggles, my anguish, my anger, maybe a little moment of happiness and all that. And we're going to put that, it's in the book. So there's a lot of exciting things in a good way. And my dream is, even if today's talk just teaches one person in the world about my mother, Sharon, again, we've changed the world for the better. So, like I said, I really appreciate you and all your audience. And again, this shouldn't end today. Feel free to follow me on all the social media. I'll follow you back. The other thing is, we're not a foundation. We're not a company. It's just me. It's my wife, it's my family, but really it's just me. So I get like people mistaking us for a foundation. I don't want that. Like, we don't want the taxes. We don't want the money. If you look on Together for Sharon, there's a link to donations. That link goes to 4 or 5 organizations around the world that help, like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the Parkinson's
Amazing.
Foundation, and it's cool, very cool. I like the word cool, but because they made specific pages, so it's their organization. They made pages that are dedicated in my mother's memory. But them, so if you donate even a 50 cents, it'll go, in memory of my mother, but to their organization, which is beautiful. Because again, I don't have to deal with all the, the money and all. I don't want anything to do with that, and we don't get anything. Our own family donated about $15,000 in the last 4 years. My goal is again to get to 50,000 someday, but again, I'd rather just stop that and have a cure. And I have a daughter. She's now 11. My mother, I'll never forget a story. My mother never had any girls. She had two boys. Her dream was to have a daughter, but she didn't. So when we told my mother our firstborn was going to be a girl, my mother's face lit up. It was probably one of the best days of my life. She started crying, but in joy, and she bought all these dolls for my daughter Brooke, and she bought dress. She wanted to dress her up like a doll. So I'm really thankful for those good times she did get to have with her. And but I look at myself and think to Brooke, maybe you can continue together for Sharon.com in the future if I'm no longer here. Luckily, I'm still pretty young, but you never know anymore in this life. So, but then before I said that to her, I'm like, you know what? Wait, we don't want that. I want to cure, and I don't want to have this anymore. So obviously the site could be up, but I don't want her to have to, run it, because I hope we have a cure.
Yeah, I've had similar thoughts with my son, and that is very conflicted. It's like, oh, maybe they can do that, but then, yeah, if they're still doing it in 30 years' time, and that'd be tinged with a little
Right.
bit of sadness for me, because you'd want to think you've moved forward a little bit. So, but I think just to pick out a couple of things you said there. First of all, know that just you is a wrecking ball enough in this conversation. You're doing amazing things on your own, and I certainly didn't have that full awareness when I was looking through your website a couple of weeks ago and everything. And also, just massive taking my hat off to you regarding the whole fundraising thing, because with all that you do, it'd be so much, there'd be a logical point to make it a foundation and everything. So when you go on your website and click those donate buttons, and it goes to other organizations, like, I don't know, I think that just summarizes you perfect.
We actually, one time, we do a lot of walks, like for Parkinson's and for other organizations. And we sad in a way, because we have a table, I pass out bands for free and have a poster of my mother and I, but we're in the middle of all these pharmaceutical companies selling things. So
Yeah.
sometimes the people passing by are scared because they think we're trying to sell something. But I had a gentleman who actually realized what we were doing, came over, hugged and cried. We didn't even talk, but it was like the best moment. And even though I love virtual, sometimes that, in person, like you said, you travel to a lot of the places, which I think is amazing, because, in person, seeing people and talking and hugging them is just so amazing. But yeah, I mean, you got to try. And I thought about even having a foundation in the future, but like I said, I hope we don't need to, because I hope by then we have a cure.
Yeah, it's just like I say, it's incredible, because I'm always very aware that I'm relying on the same people supporting us, whether it's when we stream or we do this on a Sunday night, and people subscribing and things like that, because it's literally the only way we can reach and do those things in person. Particularly, when you've got long-term health conditions, things like travel insurance, etc., it isn't exactly cheap. So yeah, to do everything that you do and just point people's financial support elsewhere, I can't tell you how wonderful and love it. I think it just sums you up as a person. There was one other bit I just wanted to call back to what you said there, and that was about the moments you had of your mother and the videos and the photos and that. And I think I just wanted to touch really quickly on that for anyone that's watching this from like an advocacy point of view, about that importance of keeping something back for yourself as well. I don't know if you agree with that, but I know I share so much of my journey. I it means a lot to me to have just a little pocket that's just mine. You know what I mean? My part of the story that maybe doesn't get shared. And I don't know. Do you find that as well? I appreciate they were difficult days, but just having those memories that only you have.
Yeah, I try to think of the good ones, but sadly, again, the bad ones seem to be like overtaking them. Like the one night I rushed to my mother's house, the night I became her real full-time caregiver, was I brought her to the hospital. They said we saved her life, but I was like almost kind of happy about it. But then when I saw what it did after, it was sad. But I actually brought her to the hospital. I went back home to pick up some of her clothes, and I know you probably, everyone here has like post-it notes, that you use to keep notes to yourself.
Mhm.
I went into her room to pick up clothes, and the whole room, it was like a kind of a scary movie, and there were post-it notes everywhere. And at that point, they had names of people and animals that used to live with us that are no longer here, but she couldn't understand at some point because of the dementia who is, reality and who is not. So those kind of moments, like it's tough to just forget. I relive them a lot in the book, but those are the worst times. But then again, I got to keep thinking about the good ones. But then, there's even like holidays are tough. Last December for the holiday, there's like a chair missing at the table.
Yeah.
And then, my mother loved music, and I always joke and said they tortured me with Barry Manilow, Lionel Richie, and Kenny G growing up. But then now I love them all. My wife and I actually went a few months ago in Florida to see Lionel Richie. And after we left, I was so excited, but I wanted to pick up the phone and call my mother, but I couldn't. So those are the things that still trouble me. But like I said, I keep smiling. You got to keep positive. When there are some nights I might even be talking to you at like midnight online because I don't sleep thinking about the other individuals who are still going through this, and that really kind of drives me. I don't know if it's a positive, negative, and we could have a whole talk too about caretaking, but it's just you got to keep pushing, you got to keep fighting, and if something means the world to you, then you just you're never going to give up. And all my podcasts are individuals who have Parkinson's or organizations trying, or also who loved ones who lost people for Parkinson. So those individual stories too just wake my eyes up and keep me going. And until I could see there's no more stories of people struggling, I got to keep fighting.
Yeah, well, know as somebody as an onlooker of all the paths you could have chosen with that grief, you've definitely done the most positive thing and more. You go above and beyond. So thank you for everything that you do to raise awareness. And I suppose on that point of like raising awareness, I'd like to talk about the Michael J. Fox thing because, like, for somebody from my generation, you might haven't had an elderly relative or something with dementia, but for Parkinson's, that was really, as a man born in the 80s, that was my first real sort of public conversation awareness of the disease. And yeah, tell us about meeting him and what did you talk about?
No, I appreciate it. There's a lot of celebrities, unfortunately, have it, but still today, I won't name names. They still are just kind of shyer and don't want to come
Mhm.
out and talk about it, which is sad. I actually reached out to a few. One's a very famous comedian, but and one's an actor, but they're not ready. I did have the honor to speak to one of Muhammad Ali's daughters. I interviewed her. She told me incredible stories. Again, we don't have the time right now, but there's also I actually reached out lately to Ozzy Osbourne's son, Jack, trying to reach because it's not just about the celebrity; it's the families. They're all like Sharon; they're all affected. There's also so many, sadly, some we've lost, like former Attorney General Janet Reno. We can keep going the list, but the problem is Parkinson's is one of the fastest growing neurodegenerative diseases in the world. So that's frightening. So that means that more. I mean, when I go on things, speak. Even I did a podcast the other day. The host, even said his neighbor has it, and like so, people now are not just seeing family get it, but now neighbors and friends
Yeah.
and people, coworkers. So meeting Mr. Fox. It's a long story, but I loved him as a actor. I love Back to the Future. Ironically, when I had back spine surgery, which was a nightmare, the only reason I was excited was in the hospital afterwards. They had a marathon of Back to the Future. He hasn't been doing too well. They have a big gala every year. We haven't been to it, and I heard that he hasn't even been able to attend his own gala for 3 years. I don't know why, but it's likely because of Parkinson's. So there was just for some odd reason, a friend of mine, he likes celebrities and he's amazing. I don't have the time and like the patience. They wait in these long, long lines around the country
Yeah.
meeting their favorite. It's great, but I can't do it. So I would never normally go. But I thought in my mind, he's not doing great, but this could be one of his last public appearances. Why don't I go? It was about 3 hour drive. And usually, again, I don't go anywhere because I work a lot. I'm a professor of criminal justice, but I love my work, so I'm not complaining about that. So anyway, I looked to my wife who works with me and I said, can you believe he's going to be only 3 hours away? And this is like a once in a lifetime thing. And then I said, forget it. I know I can't make it. She's like, you should just do it. And I said, you know what? You're right. So we just dropped everything and we went. And it was more of like one of those Comic Con things where it's
Mhm.
more for Back to the Future and his, actually Christopher Lloyd was there. Leah Thompson and the big guy who plays Buff, I think was his name. I don't remember, but so they were really there for that. But I was coming at it at a whole different world where if I could just get a minute to talk to him. So I planned this whole speech. And then I get there and they say, you can't speak to him, you can't touch him, all these rules. But they forgot that I'm a cop and a lawyer, and I'm like, it's my one shot. So I had my band, and let me, I wish I had it, but this is the, I don't know if you can see it. This is the Together for Sharon band. It's right there.
Yeah.
And so I rolled it up in my hand sneakily and got the opportunity to be up to him. And I noticed, like, when I looked at him, he was sitting in a chair, like a lot of the other actors. He couldn't really, he looked like his health wasn't the best. And again, I could be wrong. Maybe he just didn't, he was tired. So I'm just saying from my point of view. So I leaned over. I told him that, he's my hero. And I'm grateful for, how he stands up for Parkinson's. I told him about togetherforsharon.com. Said we lost my mother due to Parkinson's. And again, all the money goes to his foundation, and we're not going to give up till there's a cure. And he said, thank you. And I had a little part, I was going to ask him if I could interview him someday, but part of me, like when I saw how he was acting, I don't know if it was partially happiness, but also a little sadness, thinking of my mother at that moment. And it all, like, you ever have like one of those moments, everything just flashes by. I got the picture. I left later in the night. People who also met him, but for Back to the Future, were posting pictures everywhere. And one of my friends wrote me and said, "Did you see this, George?" And I said, "What?" And he was actually wearing the Together for Sharon band the whole night.
Oh,
So
wow.
he put it on himself. So it was just an honor that he now knows about my mother. He knows about what we're doing. And, that was a moment I'll never forget. Unfortunately, afterwards, I went to the bathroom and started falling apart because I,
Yeah.
I just, I felt bad that he's still fighting it and that we lost my mother. And then I thought again of all those other people who, this is a beautiful actor, a beautiful spirit, beautiful person. And his whole life, again, has been kind of, kind of pushed back, even though he's still fighting, still doing things. Just no one should ever stop your dreams. And Parkinson's, unfortunately, when it accelerates, because we can't control it, it can ruin individuals, lives, caretakers, families. And I still feel confident that we will have a cure very soon if we all play our role and play our part. And if everybody listening just tells one person, like a neighbor, a friend, a cousin, someone you haven't spoke to, that they know about Together for Sharon and your work, Joel, that we've spread the word. And I hope that really spreads like more of a disease than Parkinson's, because our word of mouth is much better and more efficient than even medical science. So I think, if you look at other diseases and viruses like COVID, unfortunately, I mean, I'm not saying it's gone and all that, but we had some kind of vaccine fast, like beyond history. And again, I don't know how safe it is and all that, but if we could just have something to slow the progression down. Now, we do have more research since my mother passed that shows exercise, diet, things like that can slow down the progression of Parkinson's. But again, it depends what stage, and it's just so different for everyone. If it was my mother at the fourth year, it wouldn't have, exercise wouldn't have helped.
Well, the only thing I've got going in my head that I really want to get across to you is like every now and then you'll meet people, especially with what I'm doing with this work, and they talk and they just leave an impression. And I think that just sums you up perfectly. We've shared so many stories on here, but I'm not even surprised that he was wearing that wristband, because you are just that type of person that you speak and people listen, and it makes an emotional connection. I think that's a really special gift, and I'm sure your background in law and everything as well plays its part in that. I just, yeah, if next time you're worrying about if it has an impact, or when the grief gets too much, or and I'm worrying about the world we're leaving to our children, this sort of thing, just know that this conversation will stick with me for a very long time, if not life.
No, I appreciate it. I do have one important message that I try to leave every podcast I do in my own or others. And I just want everyone listening, and feel free to share this, but this from us. We love you, we support you, and we care a lot about you. You're never alone. I will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started, because every morning I wake up, I'm kind of rejuvenated in a way, and I just ready to just keep fighting, even though I'm sacrificing some days my own health. And I mean, I used to be a big fitness person, but I just don't have the time, because I think this is more important than me and us and everyone. It's very, very important. So I say I'm just getting started, even though I've been doing it for a year or more. But again, I'm so grateful, and I'm still available. But I wanted to thank you for the time and all the listeners. And again, we're all family in this fight. Together for Sharon is behind Joel, and also your fight. And if I could ever be of any help, always count on me too.
You're a wonderful human being, Dr. George. Just amazing, and make sure you find time for you as well, because as somebody that has very similar views, and I go in at the deep end with my advocacy, I have to kind of remind myself to find time to do the things I want to do, because unfortunately that burden that you can feel with all the people that need help, need support, and their stories that need sharing can become a bit of a sort of one-way road. So but you are absolutely welcome back anytime. Like the comments we've had in chat have been amazing, and I'm sure we'll have the same reaction when people listen to the podcast back in the coming weeks and months as well. Where can I know we've talked about the website? Anywhere else you want to tell people where they can find you in terms of like social media and things like that? Obviously, you have a YouTube channel, I understand.
Yeah, if you go to togetherforsharon.com, scroll down towards the bottom, it shows all the social media. But like I said, I know I'm grateful that you picked this guy from the U.S., but this is not, a U.S. issue. It's a U.K. issue. It's a Europe issue. It's America. It's all of us. So Parkinson's doesn't discriminate, sadly. But if we all fight back, we're going to definitely end this disease. Again, it's just me that I feel like we're all family, so that I'm not alone either in this fight. But I'm easy to find. I'm always on, and I don't even know how it's grown this big. And I imagine it's going to we're actually flying to New York City for the first time it's called the Unity Walk, and it's the 30th anniversary. So every year in April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. To me, every day is Parkinson's Awareness. I don't know why it's just a month. It's not for the people diagnosed and caretakers. It's every day, every minute. It's not 1 month, but it is nice to have a recognition. But that's going to be amazing because people from all over the world join, take a little walk in Central Park, which is iconic in New York City. And we all just, people with Parkinson's care, we're just going to walk for a mile in memory of all our loved ones and raise money for, the disease. And Michael J. Fox Foundation is actually sponsoring it. And it's sad because they had the Unity Walk, but COVID destroyed it. I don't know the story behind it, but it kind of ended it. And they've actually been nice enough to pick it up, and they're continuing it on. So, when someone's down or sad or has pain, it's amazing that others out there can help pick you up and get you going. And again, I always want to end it in a positive way. So everyone listening, again, don't feel down. Just exercise 45 minutes a day if you can. Hug your loved ones and just keep smiling. Because another thing, my wife was incredible. When my mother had her worst days, I mean, the last year she went from someone with a normal weight to being so skinny that it was almost horrific to see her. But my wife was amazing. We just wanted even those small moments, like a second or two, if my mother could smile. So my wife would bring in, and we're men, so I don't know anything about this stuff, but she brought someone to do my mother's hair. They brought a pedicure, a manicure, all this stuff. Some days my mother was too sick, but there is one special time. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I was only 40, 50 minutes from New York City with Broadway. My mother loved taking me as a child to Broadway. I learned how to play guitar. I've been playing for 20 years. It's more, again, just for fun. It was snowing one week, and my mother decided, "Why don't you learn guitar?" And I said, "Sure." So before my mother passed, I'd say a week before, she wasn't able to really talk anymore. So she lost ability to do anything. And so we had a guitar therapy. I don't know if you know, there's actually, music therapy, and I think it's incredible. So we actually decided, why don't we play the song Memory from Cats? Because when I was a kid, my mother brought me to New York City, Broadway, to see Cats. So we played the song, and it was really amazing. And we somehow, for some reason, I taped it, and it's on the website. You won't see my mother, but at the very end, she said, "I loved it and thank you." And those were her last words she ever said to us. She lived for 7 more days and didn't really. It was we don't have a thing called death with dignity in Florida, which they're trying to pass, where we treat our animals nicer than our own family. So I commend the states that do allow dignity for those who are, end of life. So I was able to have that amazing moment we put on the site. So you'll see a lot of things on the site, again, our story, but now it's becoming, again, about everybody. So just trying to stop putting things on. I get excited that there's just are exciting things happening. The walk, I'm a weird person because I don't have Parkinson's, and I'm not currently a caretaker of someone living with Parkinson's. So I've been to many support groups, but I don't speak. So I stopped going because I felt like I can't tell the stories about, wills and how important it is to have a funeral plan, because I don't want to make people sad. So I was approached by a Canadian organization called PSP Awareness. And this month, it's kind of history for me. We're starting the first ever support group, and I'm going to run it completely free, no charge, and it's virtual. So it's for anyone around the world who lost a loved one to any disease. So it's not just parts for anything, cancer, Alzheimer's, and we're just going to meet. We're going to just talk to each other and know that, we're supported. I'm kind of scared because if it gets too many people, we won't be able to do it. You want it to be kind of really small so you can all, but anyway, so there's incredible positive things happening. And I just don't want to end on a sad note. If you do read my book eventually when it comes out, it's this journey of my mother, and then leads to my journey as her caretaker, and then the aftermath in a way, but my journey now as an advocate and keeping my mother's memory alive. So, it ends in a good note, and for, others. And I just want to again thank you and the audience for your time. And this again doesn't end now. I'm sure me and you become good friends, and I hope all those here with us today and listening to recorded will also join us, because without everyone hand in hand, we're going to be further from a cure. But if we all team up, join together, and share even just Joel's podcast today with the world as much as we can, then we're going to end Parkinson's disease. And then maybe we can all take a little break and breathe for a minute. But until then, we fight on.
And you're a wonderful human being. It's such an honor to meet you. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm going to end by bringing you back to something you said a few minutes ago about when you said, I don't know how this got so big. I think I'd probably speak on behalf of everyone that's listening and watching this, either tonight live or in the future. I think anyone that's been in this audience will know exactly why this got so big, because what you're doing is brilliant. And again, please look after yourself, make time for yourself, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's incredible. It's just incredible. And thank you for giving up your Sunday to share some of what you do with us. And you're welcome back anytime, absolutely anytime. When that book comes out, as things progress through the Senate and Congress, as and when you do anything, on this journey, which I'm sure this is just the start, then please do, get in touch and come back and give us an update.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, we send our love and support to everybody with any, struggle. It's not just about Parkinson's. We're a family. I want to end Parkinson's. Maybe we can help end dementia, because that's another terrible infliction that my mother had to fight. But sadly, we don't have time for everything. So we have to concentrate on one first. But dementia is a tough one. So thank you all again for your time and love and support, and sending it right back to you.
Amazing. Dr. George Ackerman, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everything you do, and I'll speak soon.